Stand by for action.
And thank you very much for tuning in and listening to this podcast. My name is Dave Milner. I am the Unpleasant Blind Guy. And we've got quite a week of stuff to talk about here, guys. This has been a roller coaster week for every American. I think the Boston bombing is definitely at the top of the list. Then for those of us who are from Texas or who give a damn about Texas, the Texas explosion, fertilizer plant in West, kind of takes second place, and all kinds of stuff in between. We've got a lot to cover. I did say, though, that I want to keep this podcast short, so some stuff is going to be missed. I'm not going to do some stuff. There are going to be some things that I'm going to cover, though, and we're going to get into that right now. All right, first of all, the Boston bombing, my impressions, and what I think about the media response and the resolution. When I first saw that news story come up about the Boston bombing, the first thing I thought of was not the first thing that the establishment media thought of. The establishment media this week, I have to say, was probably their worst week ever. And I've been watching news media, pop culture, and how they interface with news media and current events for almost 45 years. This was not a good week for our lefty friends in the media. Their first response was to speculate that the bombings were caused by right-wing radicals. It's some kind of right-wing, nut job out there. I didn't hear any immediate references to the Tea Party movement, but hey, I'm sure they were there in some places. And of course, Salon was awesome. They said they hoped that the bombing was caused by a white American. No racism there. And I have to say, Glenn Beck had a great point. The media was actually rooting for this attack to be caused by an American. They were hoping for this. And what most of the establishment media was hoping for was that it was going to be an attack caused by Americans who supported gun rights, Americans who supported the Tea Party movement, basically Americans who disagreed in any way with the left. Now remember, I'm doing this show not for the Ponzi crowd, but for people like me that don't have a lot of money. And guys, you got to understand something out there, okay? The left are desperate to try and find something to pin on people who support the Tea Party movement, because they have been pumping this narrative into our heads for decades now that anyone who isn't a Democrat, a leftist, a socialist, or whatever is inherently violent. They're going to do violent things, they have done violent things, and they're going to continue to do violent things. And there's only one problem with that, and that is that it hasn't really happened. Now, the first thing the left will tell you is, well, there was Oklahoma City. No, wrong. Dana Lash is quite right when she points out that Timothy McVeigh was a Nazi. Now, again, guys, the left always tries to paint the Nazis as right-wing. Nothing could be further from the truth. You're being played there. Nazi means National Socialist. The Nazis were socialists. They agree, at least on economic terms, with President Obama. Now, no, I am not saying that President Obama wants to open up death camps, all right? But I do say that the death camps, re-education, the indoctrination of children in schools are all traits of the Nazi movement, the Nazi socialist movement. This is stuff on the left, guys, not on the right. Don't let anybody tell you or continue to tell you that it's on the right. And this is the narrative that the media was pushing all week and will probably continue to try and push, even though now we know that the bombers were radical Muslims. Now, I said radical Muslims. I didn't say that they represented all Muslims. I said radical Muslims. And I really don't feel like I should have to qualify that. All right? The religion of Islam is supposedly a religion of peace. Okay, that's fine. But when someone blows people up, I call them radicals, along with a lot of other things that, frankly, I don't even want to put on YouTube. Okay? They're not good people. They're not nice people. They're religious fanatics that will go to the lengths of killing people who don't buy into their faith. This is wrong, and every time it's done, I'm going to point that out, and that may upset people on the left who want to be politically correct and all-inclusive, but it's the truth. It's something else that a lot of people on the left can't really deal with. Now, when the media weren't busy trying to cheer for it to be an American who just happened to be a Tea Party movement and gun rights supporter, they were getting their facts wrong. Everyone who watches the news saw this. They were getting facts wrong from day one. Conflicting reports all week long. Conflicting daily reports became conflicting hourly reports, and they became conflicting reports all the way up to the minute. And this really converged last night. Last night, for the first time, was something rather historical, and Tammy Bruce touched on this today. I have to give her some credit there. Last night, on Twitter, there were people listening to the BPD police scanner, and they were actually putting out news niblets before the traditional media got hold of them. Now, the traditional media had a rather snarky attitude towards people on Twitter after that, saying, well, you guys only listened to the scanners and talked about that. Well, that's fine, but guess what? That's what the news media does. The only difference between us and them was that we were putting it out immediately and not going through the filter of a producer or a news editor or something of that nature. And all I've got to say to the traditional media is, welcome to 2013, guys. This is the way things are done today. We're not going to wait for you guys to feed us little, dribbles and drabbles of information and then spend hours on your cable channels rerunning the same old news. It doesn't work that way anymore, and it's not going to work that way in the future. And I would seriously suggest that you guys begin getting used to it. Now, of course, they won't. People like this die off very hard as far as their opinions go. But eventually, they're going to have to come to terms with it. And I just have to say that last night was really, really awesome. An awesome thing to be a part of. The new media stepping into the fore and becoming the people reporting the news when the news channels were too slow to do the same thing. Then we jump forward to today, when there still wasn't a heck of a lot being done in the traditional media. There were a few press conferences. Deval Patrick and the mayor of Boston came out and basically made statements and didn't take questions. That was pretty sad. And then, boom. This evening, the suspect number 2, his name is Zoltan or Zoltar or some kind of thing like that sounds either like a gypsy or a character from an Ed Wood movie. Made the brilliant move of making a break for it on foot and trying to hide inside a boat, inside a trailer, on dry land, behind a house. Has to be the most lame terrorist escape attempt in history. So it all concluded, and everyone is very happy tonight. And I, for one, want to wish the people of Boston and Watertown all of the best. And I hope that we'll all pray for the people who are injured, for the families of those who have died. This is, in a sense, over, because we have the bombers now. But in another sense, the questions are still beginning. I think it's pretty obvious why these guys did what they did, but the real questions are, who helped them? What are their connections? And can we possibly expect more attacks like this? Now, hopefully the media will drop the political correctness and drop the phony outrage at the racism, which doesn't exist, and do their jobs of actually being investigative reporters. One can only hope, though one is not very hopeful, quite frankly. It's a good thing there are organizations out there like the Blaze who are going to at least make an attempt at telling us the truth. So, we've got other news, of course. Now, after I made my first podcast, my brother emailed me and said, well, that was okay, but I got a suggestion. You make sure you tell him you're from Texas. Well, my immediate response to that was, I'll mention that when it's time to mention it, and not before. Well, it's time to mention it. I was born and raised in Texas, and proud of it. I don't live in Texas right now because the weather's too hot, but the people are fantastic. And I think that was shown by the response that ordinary people had to the fertilizer plant explosion in West Texas. That's the town of West in Texas. Now, for those of you who don't know anything about that place, and it's quite understandable that you wouldn't, I know a little bit about it. I visited there not only as a lot of Texans do, who are either traveling up from South Texas or down from North Texas, because West is right on I-35, and Texans in the know stop by there to pick up sausages and pastries. And these are made by the local Czech community there, and they are fantastically good. It's just something you have to do if you're traveling in Texas and you're in that area. You got to stop by West and get some good stuff. It's really great, and I really hope that isn't gone now. A good deal of the town was taken out by the explosion. It's a small town. Not a whole lot of people are there. I had an aunt there who has since moved to a town somewhat further south. And I just want to say the response when this explosion occurred was just like Texas folding in on itself. Help came from the north, from the Fort Worth, Dallas area. Help came from the south, from Austin and San Antonio. Help came from every other place around. Help came from Waco. Help came in the form of all of the first responders that you would normally expect, and ordinary people whom you might not expect. People were taking people in their cars to the many hospitals that finally received the people who were victims of the explosion. Hotels were offering out rooms. It was an excellent response, and that's the basis of a joke that I told on Twitter. I think yesterday or the day before, I said, how is a Bostonian like a Texan? Both run toward disaster when they know their neighbors need help. And just as I'm sure my friends down in Boston are very proud to be Bostonians at this point, I am, as I've always been, very proud to be a Texan. And my thoughts and prayers go to the people of West, to their families, and I hope that you will extend them your prayers and thoughts as well. All right, in other news, there were a few fun things that happened this week. One of the most fun things was former Governor Mark Booty Call Sanford, who was running for Congress, is no longer running for Congress. Seems he was breaking into his wife's house using his cell phone as a light. His former wife's house, by the way. Yes, the left has Anthony Weiner, and the right, well, we don't have Mark Sanford, but he was a Republican, which is one more reason not to support the establishment Republican Party, if you ask me. This guy is a complete piece of work. And I have to say this for him, okay? At least our Wiener, stretched all the way down to South America. I mean, it really takes style to be the governor of a state and then jump down to Argentina for a booty call. I mean, that takes a kind of audacity that, were it used for good purposes, would be a good thing. But as it is, I really don't want to see the guy in American politics any more than I want to see Anthony Weiner in American politics. Although, I have to agree with Small G Gay. My guess, Anthony Weiner is going to be the next mayor of New York. Yes, I'm agreeing with him. I'm throwing that down. Unless something titanic happens to shift that, I think that's going to be NYC's next mayor. Good going, Nuevo York. Yeah. Awesome, folks. And I can't let a show go by without a mention of Pat Summerall, who died this week at the age of 82. Anyone out there who's a football fan knows the voice of Pat Summerall. If there's anyone, aside from John Madden, that you could call the voice of football, it would have to be Pat Summerall. His calling of games graced many a Sunday for many a football fan, and he will be sorely missed. My thoughts go to his family and friends, and football will go on without him, but it won't be the same. And finally, yes, it's almost over, guys. Finally, in my Americans Are Awesome segment, yeah, it was really difficult to find one story this week of Americans being fantastic, because there were so many instances of this in Boston, in West, everywhere. All of these people, ordinary people, not famous people, people running to help in areas where there was danger, disregarding their own safety to help their fellow Americans. That really shows the character of the people of this country. And I've told you before, don't let the narrative of the left that we're not a good people keep you down. Don't let that become your narrative. Don't let the left tell you that we as Americans are anything but magnificent. Are there jerks in every country? Yes, there are. Are there jerks in the United States of America? Yes, there are. But those are the ones that the left wants you to concentrate on. This week showed the mettle of Americans in the Northeast and Americans in Texas. And the thing is that this is not unusual. This is normal. Because we are magnificent. Thank you very much for listening. I want to close the show by paraphrasing the comedian Dave Allen, who had a show on the BBC during the times of violence between Protestants and Catholics in Northern Ireland. I always dug the way he closed his show, so I'm going to kind of paraphrase and close it in a similar way. See you next time. Thank you, and may your God go with you. Goodbye.